In the opulent hushed lobby of the St. Regis Monarch, a single dad, James, wearing the worn clothes of a general contractor, sat down at the magnificent grand piano to comfort his exhausted daughter. The first clear, complex notes of a secret melody drifted powerfully through the air. Across the room, CEO Amelia Vance, famous for her iron will and ruthless ambition, was signing a multi-million-dollar deal. She instantly froze, the expensive pen hovering just above the contract, her renowned composure completely shattered. That melody was the secret music her first love wrote just for her, a promise and a song she thought was buried forever. James Maxwell was a man forged by quiet endurance. At 34, he embodied the weary, steady strength of a single father who had traded potential fame for guaranteed survival. His life was now defined by meticulous routine, fierce resilience, and the relentless, non-negotiable needs of his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. He was a highly skilled general contractor, a repairman who fixed what others broke. This work kept him stable. It placed him firmly outside the glamorous orbit of places like this, the opulent St. Regis Monarch. He lived simply. He dressed practically. In the eyes of the hotel's polished staff and clientele, he was functionally invisible, a necessary, lower-caste utility. They occupied the world of high-gloss success. He managed the shadow world of maintenance and practical application. His hands, now rough from handling tools and wiring, carried the ghost memory of another life. They still possessed the fluid, precise movement of a concert pianist. He had been an artist, a composer of startling, raw genius, before fate and necessity redefined his existence. Now the strongest music he made was the comforting lullaby he hummed to Lily while tightening a faulty junction box. Lily, however, was his constant guiding light. She possessed a deep, inherited passion for music. Her current obsession was the grand piano, an instrument James rarely had the opportunity to touch. Their small apartment held an old, slightly out-of-tune electronic keyboard, not a proper piano. Tonight they were at the St. Regis because James had been called in for an emergency electrical fix, a high-priority power supply issue that needed fixing immediately behind the scenes. The clock was past Lily's bedtime, and his sitter had canceled last minute. Exhausted by the long day of waiting patiently in his truck, Lily was drooping, her small voice a barely audible plea. "Daddy, the tired song. Please. Just once." Aluan, the tired song, was her pet name for that melody, the song he had always played to settle her during moments of stress or exhaustion. The concierge, a young man named Julian, stepped forward, his posture professionally icy. He had a rulebook tattooed to his soul. "Sir, I understand, but our policy dictates—" Julian glanced pointedly at the exclusive corner where Amelia was working. "We must maintain absolute quiet for our investors and VIP guests. We cannot have impromptu performances." Julian was rigid, but James saw the subtle flicker of sympathy in his eyes, directed at Lily's tired face. It was at that moment that Amelia Vance, the CEO and major development investor, made her imposing presence known. She was a whirlwind of precision, clad in an immaculately tailored black suit, her focus a tangible, almost frightening force. She was currently deep in negotiation with the hotel owner, her expression a mask of calculated, exhausting intensity. She was a woman who had fought her way to the top, shedding every perceived weakness, every soft corner, including, she often told herself, sentimentality along the way. Amelia was concentrating on the financial briefing, her mind already 3 steps ahead of the lawyers. James spoke calmly, his voice low, lacking any trace of demand or aggression. 5 minutes, that's all. Not for the acoustics, but for her. He gently pointed to Lily. "No charge for the emergency work. Just 5 minutes of peace before I finish up." He met Julian's eyes with a weary, yet absolute resolve that surprisingly made the younger man hesitate. A few VIPs exchanged whispers near the bar, their eyes cataloging James's simple, slightly dusty work boots and his practical jacket. Out of place, unprofessional, a disruptive element. The silent judgment was heavy, palpable, and designed to make him retreat. Ignoring them, James gently scooped up Lily, resting her on his hip as he approached the magnificent, jet-black Steinway. He set her down carefully on the leather bench, then sat beside her, his body shielding her from the room's judging gaze. His hands, calloused and strong from construction work, settled over the polished ivory and ebony keys with a shocking naturalness. It was the movement of a master returning to a forgotten throne. He didn't strike a chord immediately. He simply waited, his eyes closed for a brief, cleansing second, clearing his mind of wires and blueprints. He drew a deep breath. Then he began. The opening notes of the melody were simple, almost nursery rhyme-like, a quiet, descending arpeggio, but imbued with a profound, almost aching clarity. They cut through the low-level hum of the expensive hotel, silencing the faint ambient jazz track that usually played. The familiar, unique sequence, the specific timing, the unexpected shift to a diminished chord, the gentle weight on the middle C, struck Amelia like a sudden physical blow. The initial judgment from the onlookers began to dissipate, instantly replaced by a collective, unspoken question. Who was this man? And why was his forgotten song so utterly captivating? Even Amelia's relentless focus on spreadsheets and mergers could not withstand the sound of her own deepest, buried past. The melody unfolded slowly, deliberate and fragile, a counterpoint to the hurried, transactional energy of the lobby. James's technique was not flashy. There were no grand flourishes or unnecessary embellishments. It was simply perfect. Pure emotional communication delivered through absolute technical mastery. Every note was exactly where it should be, played with the touch of someone who understood the instrument as an extension of his own beating heart. Lily leaned fully against him now, her eyes closed, a small, peaceful sigh escaping her lips. She was anchored, safely wrapped in the familiarity of her father's sound, completely oblivious to the public spectacle they were creating. One by one, guests halted. A couple returning from dinner, a businessman checking his portfolio, Julian the concierge rigid by his station. All were drawn in, witnesses to this unplanned, deeply private performance. Amelia's formidable, polished exterior was rapidly shattering. Her fingers pressed against her mouth, desperately trying to steady her shallow, ragged breath. The color had drained completely from her face, leaving her professional mask brittle and transparent. The air around her, moments before charged with millions of dollars of negotiation, suddenly felt thin, cold, and utterly irrelevant. She recognized the precise harmonic structure, the unique, heartbreaking transitions between the minor and major keys, the musical signature of a young, intense composer she had known by a different name. The melody was composed in 3 distinct movements. The first, a hopeful, soaring theme capturing the reckless abandon of their early love. The second, a dissonant, demanding conflict in the bass line mirroring the pressure of Amelia's career demands. And the third, a tender, melancholic resolution. A flood of sensory memory, powerful and vivid, crashed over her. She saw the tiny, cluttered studio apartment they had shared near the conservatory. She could smell the musty odor of old sheet music and the cheap coffee James used to fuel his all-night composing sessions. She remembered the scratchy, worn velvet of his rickety piano bench and the exact weight of his hand on her shoulder the night he wrote this song for her. "It's yours, Amy," his voice echoed in her memory. "It's the sound of my promise to you, even if the rest of the world falls apart." This song, it was never recorded professionally. It was never performed publicly. It existed only as a single cassette tape, labeled only for Amy, a secret buried deep beneath years of ambition, corporate mergers, and emotional withdrawal. She had truly believed the man who wrote it had disappeared entirely. She had convinced herself he had either given up music or simply moved on to a different, unknown life without her. His necessary absence had been the perfect, clean slate for her brutal, rapid ascent to power. The melody surged into its well-remembered climax, a passionate, demanding sequence of arpeggios that spoke of youthful dreams, reckless, unbounded love, and the terrifying belief in forever. James's hands moved across the keys with a controlled fury, channeling years of repressed emotion, the loss of his career, the death of his ambition, the immense quiet joy of his daughter, into the final movement. The silence in the hotel was now total. profound. Even the far-off sounds of traffic seemed muted, irrelevant. Julian stood immobilized, his rigid rulebook completely forgotten, caught in the terrifying undertow of the music. An older, impeccably dressed gentleman, Mr. Sterling, the hotel owner and Amelia's most critical business partner, watched from the mezzanine. He was a man who believed only in logic and returns. He whispered to his associate, the sound cracking the deep silence. "That piece, that is not common sheet music. Listen to the structure. It's too personal, too real. It's not performance. It's confession." The VIP guests around them nodded slowly, acknowledging the profound emotional weight of the moment. Amelia, driven by a desperate force far stronger than her usual corporate discipline, began to move. Slowly, deliberately, she walked out of her corner, across the wide, unforgiving expanse of the marble floor, drawn entirely by the sound of her own past, her youthful self. Each step she took was a powerful defiance of the CEO she had fought so hard to become. Her heels clicked, loud, sharp interruptions in the melody's gentle, pervasive rhythm. James remained utterly oblivious to her dramatic approach. He was submerged entirely in the performance, his eyes tracking only the gentle, rhythmic movement of Lily's small head, ensuring her comfort, her peace. He played solely for his daughter. The freeze moment was now absolute, total. The powerful billion-dollar CEO, tears finally tracking down her perfect makeup, stopped exactly 5 feet from the piano, standing over the ordinary repairman and his sleeping child. The music was the only thing moving, the only connecting tissue between their two impossibly disparate lives. It demanded her attention, her repentance, her recognition. The final notes arrived, a lingering, suspended chord that resolved not into a triumphant major, but into a clean, simple, and slightly unresolved minor fifth. It was a signature ending that captured the complex, bittersweet beauty of their youthful tragedy, the promise that was ultimately broken, but never forgotten. As the last resonance faded into the vast, sudden silence, Lily stirred, blinking happily before settling back into the deep sleep of safety. The powerful spell was broken. Amelia, stripped bare of her corporate armor, collapsed onto the bench beside James, her hand flying to his arm. She didn't speak the calculated language of business. She spoke the visceral, urgent language of pain and yearning. "Where?" she choked out, her voice a fragile, public tremor, utterly unlike her usual commanding tone. "Where did you learn that? That final chord?" Only he used that chord. The entire lobby, relieved of the musical tension, now focused every ounce of attention on the raw human drama unfolding at the piano. They were utterly stunned by the CEO's public, visible distress. Amelia's question hung heavy in the absolute silence, her eyes usually sharp and calculating, begging for an immediate answer. The hotel staff, the VIP guests, the quiet man on the bench, all waited, holding their breath. James turned his head slowly. He looked at her, and recognition dawned, not with immediate warmth, but with a deep, resigned sadness. He saw the faint, telltale flicker of the driven girl he had loved, now encased in a woman of staggering, cold power. He paused for several long seconds, letting the silence stretch, forcing her and the entire room to fully absorb the moment. "The melody," he said simply, his voice low and beautifully raspy from years of disuse, "is mine. I am the man who wrote it. I am the man who wrote the final chord, the sound of a love that didn't quite make it." The crowd, already reeling from Amelia's breakdown, absorbed the information in a collective, soundless gasp. The single dad in the maintenance coat was not merely talented. He was the composer, the creator of the soul-stirring piece that had so thoroughly broken the formidable CEO. Mr. Sterling, the hotel owner, instinctively reached for his phone, then stopped, understanding that this moment was too rare, too human to be digitized or controlled. Twist 1. The hidden talent and the implosion. James's true identity began to unspool. He had been James Maxwell, the young composer everyone called the Phoenix for his fiery, passionate compositions. He had been set for a global rise with prestigious contracts from European orchestras. But when Lily's mother, his partner at the time, had suddenly left, the ensuing emotional collapse and the immediate, overwhelming, non-negotiable demands of single fatherhood had forced a brutal, impossible choice. He couldn't afford a nanny. He couldn't afford the travel. He couldn't afford the crushing emotional cost of the performance circuit. He abandoned his grand piano, his performance contracts, and his entire identity as an artist. He traded them all for the dependable, cash-in-hand work of a general contractor. His hands, once devoted exclusively to the keys, now wrestled with copper pipe and wiring diagrams. He had chosen fatherhood over genius. Twist 2. The shared secret and the great betrayal. Amelia's profound silence confirmed the deeper, secret connection. Years ago, consumed by the crushing weight of her family's impossible expectations and a burgeoning, overwhelming, once-in-a-lifetime corporate opportunity, she had fled James. She had desperately convinced herself that their young, artistic love wasn't durable enough to withstand her ruthless ambition. She needed success. He, she thought, needed only his art. In her desperate, rapid ascent, she erased every trace of her personal past, including the name Amy, replacing it with the formidable Amelia Vance. She never knew that the single most important memory, the song he had played for her the day before she left, was etched forever in his muscle memory, and now in his daughter's favorite lullaby. Her betrayal wasn't leaving him. It was leaving him to face the fallout of their shared life alone. Amelia's realization was utterly crushing. The man before her wasn't a failure or a mere workman. He was the sacrifice she had deliberately made for her empire. James offered no accusation, no bitterness, no recitation of the devastating past. He looked her directly in the eye, and the only history he acknowledged was the one sleeping so peacefully on his shoulder. "I play this," he reiterated gently, standing up to shift Lily comfortably into his arms, "for my daughter. It calms her. It's the only performance I need now." The statement was a powerful, respectful boundary. "This is my life now. It is protected. Your world of ambition cannot touch it." Amelia, overcome, slid from the bench onto the cold marble floor, bringing herself down to Lily's level. Her posture was one of absolute defeat and painful repentance. Tears flowed freely now, washing away years of calculated ruthlessness and emotional isolation. Internally, the high-powered CEO fought the overwhelming urge to calculate her risk, to spin the situation, but the emotion was too strong. "I left him for this," she thought, looking at the silent, powerful man holding his child. "I traded this genuine beauty for another billion?" "James," she whispered, not as the CEO, but as the youthful Amy from long ago. "I am so profoundly sorry. I forgot who you were. I forgot what we had. I thought I was making a tough choice. I was just being a coward." The crowd watched the absolute, stunning reversal of power. The billionaire reduced to public, pleading tears, begging forgiveness from the repairman whose only visible wealth was the child in his arms and the melody in his heart. The music had utterly transcended its simple notes, becoming a powerful, undeniable testament, a justification for a life lived quietly, and the ultimate, unspoken indictment of one lived chasing only the deafening noise of status. James nodded once, a gesture of quiet acceptance, not forgiveness. He simply turned and walked away, his daughter safe in his arms, leaving Amelia shattered on the marble floor. His dignity was the loudest statement of all. The astonishing encounter ended as quietly as it had begun. James simply left the hotel minutes later, carrying his sleeping daughter in his heavy toolbox. Amelia, the CEO, did not try to stop him. She was too stunned, too emotionally ravaged to command or assert any authority. Her security team helped her up, guiding her back to her suite. But her mind remained in the dust and coffee-scented studio of her youth. But the silence didn't last. The next day, Amelia, deliberately shedding her power suit for a simple cashmere sweater and worn jeans, sought him out. She used her resources to find his address, approaching him not as the cold hotel owner demanding service, but as a remorseful woman carrying years of crushing regret. The meeting was awkward, tense, and profoundly difficult. She found James in his small, garage-turned workshop, the air thick with sawdust and the gentle scent of oil. His apartment was simple, functional, yet immaculate, centered entirely on the old, scarred electronic keyboard. She didn't push. She didn't demand. She simply requested the music again, offering only her presence, her time, and a fragile sincerity he had almost forgotten she possessed. Lily, completely unaware of the historical drama swirling around them, became the unwitting, innocent bridge. She saw only the nice lady who was polite, gentle, and didn't mind her messy crayon drawings scattered across the floor. Amelia, the CEO, who could dictate global market trends, was stumped by Lily's third-grade math homework, and the shared genuine struggle broke the ice better than any apology ever could. In the quiet evenings that followed, James hesitantly began to play the forgotten pieces from his youth in his small living room. Amelia sat on the worn couch, not interrupting, not making business decisions, simply listening. She learned for the first time in years how to slow down, to step entirely off the relentless, high-pressure treadmill of her career. James felt the old, intoxicating, consuming pull of the instrument return. His initial resistance wasn't pride, it was fear. Fear that the demanding, all-consuming nature of his art would steal him away from his daughter again, requiring another terrible choice. He would occasionally ask her about her world. "Does that level of pressure ever just stop?" he asked one evening, his back to her, focused on the keys. Amelia sighed, a sound of profound fatigue he remembered all too well. "No, James. It just changes shape. The stakes get higher, but the emptiness remains the same." In that honest, unvarnished admission, their true equal connection reasserted itself. Amelia went a step further, subtly investing in his garage workshop, transforming it into a soundproof space, not as an order, but as a quiet, functional acknowledgement of his enduring talent. The music, however, returned not as a destructive master, but as a gentle, patient, healing balm. A key moment of profound rebirth came on a quiet Saturday morning. The morning sun slanted softly through the window, illuminating the dust motes suspended above the old keyboard. James was practicing a complex, soaring piece, a new composition born from peace, not angst. Lily, wide awake this time, walked up and put her small, warm hand on his shoulder. "Daddy," she asked innocently, her voice clear and sincere, "does it make you happy when you play the piano?" He stopped. He thought about his past life, the frantic pressure, the performance anxiety, the ultimate crushing loneliness. He thought about the peace he felt now, playing only for himself and his child. He smiled, a genuine, expansive smile he hadn't worn in years. "Yes, sweetheart," he replied, a profound sense of lightness filling his chest. "It does, very much." The material gap, the gulf between his simple maintenance job and her colossal corporate wealth, dissolved entirely. It became utterly irrelevant. Only two people remained. Two people who understood the true, agonizing cost of chasing fame and the profound, simple comfort of just being perfectly understood. He played the melody again, for Amy, but this time the ending felt profoundly different. The painful minor fifth was replaced by a soft, hopeful major chord. The pain was gone. A quiet, tentative, yet undeniably strong new connection began to form around the shared notes, anchored in the simple, unquestioning acceptance of a child. Amelia finally recognized with chilling, absolute clarity that her corporate success, the cold, empty marble lobbies, the ceaseless growth, the power, could never replace the quiet, human truth and the deep connection she had abandoned years ago. She began making drastic, controlled changes in her life, delegating power and stepping back from the all-consuming grind. She understood that James hadn't lost his talent. He had chosen the only masterpiece that truly mattered, his daughter. James, in turn, realized that his past identity as a brilliant, world-class artist didn't need to be buried or feared. It could be integrated into his present life, a powerful, beautiful gift rather than a potential threat. He started accepting small, local composing commissions, pieces written for community orchestras and school plays, finding immense satisfaction in creating art that served his family life, not dominated it. His compositions were modest, yet deep, reflecting the quiet joy and complexity of real life, a stark contrast to the aggressive, showy music he once felt compelled to produce. They did not rush to define their relationship with corporate or social labels. They simply existed in the shared, comforting rhythm of Lily's school schedule, James's necessary repair calls, and the nightly peaceful presence of the keyboard. They were two broken individuals, cautiously rebuilding their connection, not on the fiery passion of their youth, but on the quiet, shared respect of mature adults who had both paid a terrible price for their paths. The music became the new, profound, and unspoken language of their unconventional, quietly forming family. Lily, with the simple, heartbreaking honesty of a child, began calling Amelia Auntie Amy, a small, intimate sign of trust and complete acceptance, giving Amelia back the name she had sacrificed for her ambition. The grand jet-black Steinway piano was not returned to the cold hotel lobby. It was carefully delivered and installed in the brightest, sunniest corner of James and Lily's apartment, a genuine gift from Amelia, carefully selected not for its exorbitant price, but for its uniquely rich, warm, and resonant tone. Unlike the cold, ornamental instrument in the hotel, this piano felt alive, its sound filling the small space with an intimacy that power could never buy. It was a physical anchor of their reconciled past and their hopeful future. The melody of her first love was played every evening now, not in a vast, cold, impersonal hall, but in a small, cozy, and warm living room. Lily would often fall asleep on the rug beside the instrument, wrapped in the sound. There were no more freeze moments of shock, regret, or public spectacle. There was only the gentle, enduring sound of peace. James had finally composed his masterpiece, the song of his own life, set to the background harmony of a loving, unconventional family. The hotel owner, Mr. Sterling, seeing the transformation in his star's CEO, learned his own lesson. Sometimes the greatest value is found not in a balance sheet, but in a spontaneous moment of naked human truth. The story closed with a powerful, tender message. Some loves are not truly lost. They simply wait patiently to be heard again, played in the quiet, unassuming corners of the world by the people who learn to value simple, genuine truth over glittering, ephemeral status. They found that the truest masterpiece was not the dazzling composition, but the quiet, beautiful life they were now finally building together. A life where the melody of the past became the theme of their future. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe to Chip Healing Stories. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten.